All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Sergeant Millholland from Sandy Springs PD in Georgia. He has a really extensive background between military and law enforcement, so I'm really looking forward to having him on today's episode. Welcome, Sergeant Millholland. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Paige. Thank you for having me.
Of course, we've been waiting a while to have this conversation, so I'm actually really looking forward to speaking with you today. And I was hoping that you could give our listeners a little bit of background into who you are, how you got started in this profession.
Okay. Thank you, Paige. Well, I grew up in North Georgia and graduated high school in 1988. And when immediately after high school, went to Marine Corps Recruit Depot, Paris Island, and graduated Marine Corps boot camp and went into the reserves. And once I got into the reserves, I went to college at Kennesaw State and got my degree in political science. And after graduating from Kennesaw State, got commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps and went on active duty and went to Quantico, 29 Palms, and eventually got stationed in Okinawa, Japan for 3 years. After serving in Okinawa, Japan, came back to 29 Palms as an instructor for the CAX program, which is the Combined Arms Exercise Program, which was going on back in the 90s, late 90s. And after doing 3 years there, I transferred back into the reserves and came back to Georgia. And once I came back to Georgia, got into law enforcement. I went to work for Dawson County Sheriff's Office. I was there for 10 years. And while I was there, 9/11 happened. And in the reserves, got mobilized 3 times and went to Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, 2004, 2007, and 2009. Coming back to Dawson County Sheriff's Office, I continued working there and then got the opportunity to come to Sandy Springs Police. I knew the chief, Chief Ken DeSimone, and he offered me a position with the Sandy Springs Police Department. I came down here. I've been here for 15 years, and I've served patrol, traffic, street crimes. I was in recruiting and background investigations. I got promoted. I was patrol sergeant, traffic sergeant, and a couple of years ago, I was told I was going to get moved to the public information officer position. And I came over here. I've been here for 2 years. I really enjoy working with the media, the community, and it's been a true blessing. When I came over here, I kind of came over kicking and screaming because I'm kind of an introvert, and I was like, this is not going to be a good fit. And they were like, yeah, it's going to be a good fit. And it's like I said, it's been a blessing. It's been a great opportunity to expand my boundaries, and it's looking forward to see where else it goes. So
Isn't that amazing? Like I'm the same as you. I'm actually really introverted. I'm really shy. I feel like my mouth doesn't always match my brain, like I have to like kind of like catch up, with what I'm thinking, what I'm saying. And so it's hard for me to like sometimes speak in the way that I'm thinking. I don't know if that makes any sense. But through this podcast, I feel like I've gotten more comfortable with communication. And sometimes I think, because for me, I never ever thought I would host a podcast, just like you, where you're like, I never ever thought I'd be in this position, for PIO. And I think sometimes by saying yes to things or stepping outside of your comfort zone, you grow so much more than maybe you ever thought you would. And I think sometimes we're so afraid of trying new things because we're afraid we're going to fail, and we're afraid that we're going to be judged or we're not going to be good at it. But when you have those opportunities and you can say yes, and you can, like you said, expand those boundaries a little bit, sometimes it's the greatest growth period that you can have. And so I love that you said that you were like, I was kicking and screaming but now it's a blessing and I love it. And I think it's a testament to your ability to adapt and grow. But it's also a reminder to anyone who's listening that, sometimes just saying yes to an opportunity and being okay with being new at something, or being okay with maybe not being the best, but having that growth and learner mindset is only going to set you up for success and give you more skills that you can use later.
Absolutely. It's 100% correct.
Yeah. And I'm really interested in hearing, because I know you have, and you and I talked about this offline a little bit. So you served in the Marine Corps for 24 years, 13 of which were active, and then the rest were reserve. And now you've been in law enforcement for 24 years. So there's been a little bit of overlap in that time frame, but you have vast experience in both.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, in your military background, what was that experience like mentally, emotionally? You went through a lot, I'm imagining, with everything that you kind of outlined, 9/11, and what was that experience like for you?
Well, when I graduated high school, I was 17 years old, and just the maturity wasn't there. I mean, I'd never really traveled before, so just going to boot camp was an eye opener,
Mm,
and to be able to meet new people, new experiences. Again, it's pushing yourself outside the limits that you're familiar with, and to to grow and to start. And I guess back then, whenever I went to boot camp, I wasn't mature. I didn't understand the importance of networking.
mm,
And as as I went through my career in the Marine Corps, and as I've gone through into law enforcement, it's so important to remember those people that you've met and had an impact and an influence in your life, and the people that you've had an influence in their lives, because and it's so important to network, and those friendships are in, you can't put a value on those. And it's, all the places I've gone, and the experiences, it's, again, it's a blessing. And it's, the networking, and the it's it's interesting. I'm going through a course. It's a Southeastern Leadership Academy, and it's put on through the University of Tennessee, and it's led by Colonel Derek Stewart. And one of the main things that we talk about is the emotional intelligence.
mm.
And it's later in my career, it's interesting to understand how emotional intelligence is so important. And if I'd known this 30 years ago, my career may have been a little better. My Obviously my personal relationships would have been a lot better, but it's important, the maturity and the emotional intelligence, to focus on that, and to the young listeners that are out there, to really understand that. Don't wait until you're later in life to realize all the missed opportunities, and the failed relationships that you've had.
Yeah. Can I ask you, are you an only child, or do you have siblings?
I have I'm 5 of 5, so
Oh, wow. Okay.
I've got four older siblings.
Okay. Because when you were talking and you're like, I didn't recognize the importance of networking and, community. I feel that way. I'm an only child, so I feel like I grew up like super independent, and like I had different things in my life that I feel like helped me to grow up faster. I don't know if it was necessarily a good thing or not, but that's what it was, the reality of it. So I grew up faster. I was really independent, and I've struggled with that my entire life too, of like feeling like if it's going to get done, it's going to be me, and it's going to be only me, and like I'm like paving my own path, and like, leaving everyone behind. Like that was kind of my, like when I was younger. And I think, when you talk about perspective as you get older, I think you do start to understand that you can't do everything on your own, that you're stronger with a community, and that there are people who can help uplift you, and people who have, other strengths that maybe are not your strengths, and, vice versa. You're going to have strengths that other people don't. And so building that foundation as a community and together is always going to be better than, you know, paving the path alone. But it was interesting when you said that. I'm like, I wonder if he's an only child or not, because that's how I felt when I was younger. But we,
Well, I didn't mean to interrupt, but um, I was later. So my
okay.
siblings were older and they were already out of the house. Some of them were already out of the house. So um, that is very true what you're saying. And if I could add what you're talking about having the networking and the team around you, if you look at successful leaders uh, in in the world today, and whether it's business or sports or whatever it is, it's like they surround themselves with successful people, and they're successful because of the team that's around them. And we can't do it by ourselves. We have to have a team around us, and for that, the support, the knowledge, and just to get us through.
Yeah. I love how you related it to sports. I actually had a conversation recently about like um, how law enforcement is very much like professional athletes and like sports teams. And we've had like these analogies, kind of like, comparisons. And it's very true. I mean, imagine you've seen it time and time again where you have one of the best players in the NFL, right? Like on their own, they are like the best.
Hmm.
But if their team isn't like, if they're not relying on their team, or their team isn't coming together to support that, they're not winning Super Bowls. They're
Yeah,
not getting to the end and achieving that mission of winning, or whatever that mission is, for you, if you relate it to law enforcement or military. But I really like that, because you can be the absolute best, but
yeah,
that doesn't always mean that you're going to get there. Sometimes you need people in your corner to help you. And I do think that that awareness sometimes comes later. Like you said, maturity, and you start to understand that. One of the conversations that we talk about a lot is emotional intelligence. And I think it's a question mark. I think a lot of leaders across the country are asking that question of, how do we teach emotional intelligence, especially for a younger person, who maybe hasn't had lived experiences, maybe doesn't understand what domestic violence looks like, and maybe doesn't have a lot of experience with someone who is an addict, or someone who um, is homeless, or whatever. How do you show that emotional intelligence within the community? How do you have empathy? How do you look out for your teammates and have emotional intelligence, and understand when someone's feeling down or someone needs extra support? And how do you provide, because I think emotional intelligence and empathy kind of go hand in hand. How do you have that overall awareness of what's going on in your leadership training and your experience? Do you think emotional intelligence is trainable, or do you think that it requires experience?
I think it. I think it's very trainable, and it's enhanced by the experience. I think
Mm,
we as leaders need to make sure that we're making these younger officers aware that they're not perfect. They, in a sense, are immature, and they've got to grow. And then we've got to provide them with the the conferences to go to, the support networks that are out there, and to make them aware of what's out there for support, to so where they can grow. And if
yeah.
I think just making them aware that they're not perfect is the key. And then we as leaders, it's important that we listen to what they have to say, and to be able to pick up on those clues that they give, and in turn teach them, the how we operate as leaders. Listening is the most important thing, and communication it's a two-way street, but it's so important to listen and understand what people are saying. We so often, we in a conversation, we someone, the other person is talking, and I'm formulating my response, thinking that I know what they're saying, but I'm not really listening to them. So
Right.
so I'm formulating a response before they're even putting it out there. And it's just so important that we listen and understand what's being said, and picking up on all the clues.
Yeah. You know, being perfect would be really nice. I think that would be so great if we could be perfect, but I love that you are spreading the message of the fact that, and then this is my opinion, and you can tell me how you feel about it, but I think that perfection is a fallacy. I don't think that it's real. I don't think that there's anything that's perfect. I think that we can strive to be the best versions of ourselves. We can strive to be better every day. But this idea that like we are going to be absolutely perfect. And I also think that even if you did something really well, because it's not always in this perspective of failure, right, or making a mistake. I think it is a mistake if we do something really well and we say, I did it perfect, because that means that there's no room for growth. And so I think even in your triumphs and in your successes, if you can have that self evaluation and say, you know what, like that went really, really well. I'm really proud of myself for that. I think that I like did a really good job, but I wasn't perfect,
Hmm.
because there's always opportunity for me to be even better. Where are those growth opportunities where maybe I could have been like 1% better in one, form or fashion? And so I really like that you are setting that standard from the start, with the younger officers of saying, hey, like, you're not perfect and that's okay. There's always going to be room for growth. And how do we create training opportunities or self assessment opportunities for us to continue moving forward instead of us feeling, like we're stagnant? But I also think it takes the pressure off a little bit, because I think that we all, in a certain way, especially if you're like a type A personality, I think in a certain way we all do like want to be perfect, and we never want to make mistakes. We never want to fail. We never want to feel like we weren't good enough in, our professional or personal lives. But I think that that is something that we'll never be able to grab. We'll never be able to actually, achieve perfection.
Yeah. Well, Paige, it's funny you're saying this, and I automatically think about Coach Nick Saban, Coach Kirby Smart, with University of Alabama, University of Georgia, and their football programs, and they're known, to being the elite of the elite. And this past weekend, Georgia got beat by Alabama, and I
Mm,
know it hurts. It hurts those dog fans, but I know Kirby Smart is gonna, he's gonna use this as a learning example, and to learn from the mistakes that were made, mistakes made from coaching and also the players, and to
mm.
become better, and hopefully move through the season and end up in the championship game. So
Yeah.
there's always room for growth, and you know we're not perfect. So.
Yeah. Well, I think too, you see, like, I just had this conversation. I'm so glad you're relating it to football. I know you said college, but it could be anything. It could be college, it could be NFL. I heard someone say this. They were like, at the end of like an NFL season, there's only one team that's happy.
Mhm.
Everyone else failed. I'm going to put quotes, right? No, everyone else did not make it. They failed,
If you're
right?
not first, you're last.
Exactly. And, I think even to that point, like, yes, every single team that didn't win that final game failed, and they're going to look and see where could we have done better. But that team that won is also doing that. Like,
Yeah.
that's the crazy part that I think that people forget. It's like they're still looking at the videos. They're still looking, like, and you hear these interviews with these players where even after they won, they're like, man, that one pass, I dropped it, or that one pass, I threw an interception. They won the game, but they're still like sitting here being like, man, like I could have done this better. And that's the mindset. I think that is what we need moving forward, is like, if we want to progress in our lives, how can we, even when we like won the Super Bowl, like you win, you got it. How can you say, you know what, next time I'm not going to throw that
Yeah.
interception, even though we succeeded, So I love that you said that. And I do think that it takes awareness to get there, and I think that you have to have a certain mindset to want to be better. I think sometimes we get so stuck in the day-to-day grind that we're just trying to survive. We're like putting one foot in front of the other, but sometimes you need those opportunities to step back for a second and say, how do I want to live? How do I want to grow? Where do I want my life to go, instead of being stuck in the monotony of the day to day?
Yeah. Yeah. You got to be persistent and also disciplined to keep moving forward.
Yeah, and I think discipline is so underrated. And a lot of people are waiting for motivation, and
Mhm.
motivation is fleeting. Motivation, like, do you think that, some of these players are motivated to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go run laps? Like, maybe some of them have that personality, but
Yeah.
for the most part, no one wants to really do that, but they have the consistency and the dedication and the routine to do that. And
Mhm.
I think that that dedication trumps motivation all day long. Motivation may never come. When my alarm clock goes off at 4 o'clock in the morning, I am not motivated to get out of bed. I'm a sleeper. I'm a snoozer. If anyone knows me, like, I'm not a monster in the morning, but I'm a sleeper. And I have to have that consistency in my life to say, you know what, I'm going to do it no matter how I feel about it. I'm not going to let my emotions drive, the accomplishments that I have throughout the day or the effort that I have throughout the day.
Yeah. Well, Paige, it's funny because it's like you're saying things and it makes me think of other things. But I think about a lot of people talk about, well, they're lucky, or you've got luck on your side. And I remember one time my Chief D. Simone, he made a statement where he said that luck is when preparedness meets opportunity.
Mhm.
And if we prepare ourselves every day and that opportunity comes along and they marry up the preparedness with the opportunity, there's your luck. Is it by chance? Hmm, it's we have a large part in the preparedness of our success. And so
I completely agree. And I think it's really interesting. I feel like we could talk all day long on this topic. And of course, I want to jump into some other things too with you today. But, I think people will look at other people who are at the top of their game, and they will pass judgment on that, right? They'll be like, oh, it was luck. Or they'll say, I want to be there. And they only see them at the top and, successful. They don't see the work, the years and years of work and dedication that went into that, and then when you start to share, well, hey, you could do this too. You could achieve this, but here's what I did in order to get there. The
yeah,
8 years of, like, 15-hour days and no weekends and all the things that I did, to get there. And then they go, oh,
yeah,
and
they
then
got
it's the question, how bad do you really want it? Do you actually want to put in the time and the effort to get there? And for some people it's yes, and for some people it's no. And if it's a no, then I don't think that you have any room for judgment on luck or, whatever. But if it's a yes, then, like, how can you find the mentors, to help you to
mhm,
follow in those footsteps to get there?
the mentors and the accountability partners to
100%.
make sure you get there.
Yep, 100%. I'm really interested in hearing your perspective. So I know that wellness is something that is important to you. You obviously came from a military background and then entered into law enforcement. And I'm curious, you know, if you saw any difference in the culture when it comes to wellness, between the two, and maybe how you've seen wellness evolve over the last 24 years.
Well, I think with the military and law enforcement, they're very similar. And law enforcement, we have a lot of men and women that were prior military. So there's the the overlap, as as we spoke of earlier. And the level of fitness that is required to do both military and law enforcement is required because we have to meet the expectation of the American people, whether it's on a national level, whether you're in the military or you're in a local community, and the community has expectations that if they dial 911 and there's a problem, we're going to come take care of business. I mean, and so that level of fitness has to be maintained.
Mm.
And I think of a lot of officers, even in the military, we have such rigorous schedules that we often overlook our physical fitness. We don't make it a priority because we've got work to do. And I think we've got to get back to understanding that we've got to prioritize our time. And yes, work is important, but the physical fitness is important too, because we've got to be able to meet the public's expectations,
Yeah.
and we can't let them down.
Yeah. You know, I think that it's interesting. I was just having a conversation and someone said, and I really liked this. They said, you make time for what is important to you. And a lot of times, and excuse me, I'm guilty of this too, where I put everyone else in front of me, and someone told me the other day that wellness was about setting boundaries, and being able to sometimes say no to things so that you can carve out times for yourself, and so that you can have those opportunities to take care of yourself, both physically, mentally, emotionally, nutritionally, all the things. But it's interesting because you hear that all the time where people are like, well, I don't have time,
Mhm.
and obviously we know you're extremely busy, shift schedules, really hard shifts, families, if you have kids and families at home, sometimes your wellness does suffer, your sleep suffers, and you don't have the time. But this idea of you make time for what's important to you. So how can you carve out that time? What are maybe some things that need to be moved around, or what are some things that we can do away with? And I always make this like comparison because we do have some of the younger generation that'll listen to this podcast, and I'm so guilty of this. But I will all day long be like, I'm so busy, I don't have time, I can't do anything, I can't even breathe, I'm just like, you know paddling. It's like the duck analogy, like underneath the surface I'm paddling like hell to stay afloat. And meanwhile, I will have like an hour where I just doom scroll on social media, and
Mhm.
I like look up and I'm like, oh my gosh, an hour went by.
Yep.
Could that time have gone to wellness? Could that time have gone to the gym? Could that have gone towards meditating or whatever it is that is your wellness?
Yeah.
So I do think that we are always usually better at helping other people than helping ourselves. But to your point, how can you be the best version of yourself so that you can show up for others in the best way possible?
Exactly. And Paige, I don't mean to get off topic here, but it's talking about making time for ourselves, and in the terms of fitness, it's we in the military and law enforcement, I've been through leadership courses and all, and we always talk about putting God, family, country, career, in that order. And we always say, let's put family up at top, which it should be. But in reality, oftentimes, just like fitness, the family gets put to the back burner. And I'm guilty of that as well. And, throughout my military and also law enforcement career, the times that I've neglected, my family for work. And we have to, like you said, we have to prioritize and what's important. And the family is so much more important than anything else, because when the career, when the job is gone, family's going to be there. And again, the young law enforcement officers need to understand that, make time for your family, just like you're making time to keep your temple in the best shape as possible. They've got to understand the importance of that.
Yeah. Do you think, and this is really, I'm interested in your opinion on this, because we talk about the importance of these things, the importance of staying physically in shape, and you kind of related it to the job, so that you can show up and do your job effectively. We talked about home wellness, being able to prioritize your family and show up. Of course, mental and emotional wellness is going to play a role in both, how you show up on the job and how you show up at home. And there really isn't a standard across the country right now for this. You have your academy training, and then once you graduate, a lot of agencies don't have any sort of continued, physical standard or any sort of like mandated mental wellness training. Everyone's kind of doing their best, within their organizations to provide different things and to maybe have like an annual training, like maybe an AOT or something of that nature. But how, without there being a mandatory assessment or requirement for overall wellness, how do you relay the message and how do you get people to take the initiative and prioritize wellness for themselves?
Wow, it's each individual's got to look deep inside themselves, and they've got to have that discipline to want to do better, to maintain a standard, because as we get older it gets tougher, and
Yeah.
you've got to maintain that standard and to be there, again, for the community, for your family. And if you've maintain your health, you're going to be there, for your family. A lot to be said for longevity. And I know at Sandy Springs Police Department, the we have an incentive that uh, officers can run the physical fitness assessment, and it's the results are it's a 3-tier results, and if if you hit tier 1, you get a certain amount of an incentive bonus, tier 2 and tier 3 accordingly, and that's an incentive. It's not required to do the assessment, but if you choose to do the assessment, there is a monetary reward for your
Mm.
results. And that's what we do at Sandy Springs Police Department, and it's worked well. We have a lot of outstanding men and women here that are in outstanding shape, and being a little bit older, it always encourages me to get out there and keep pushing myself to keep up with them, because they are some great men and women here.
Yeah. It's funny. I always make the joke of like, you didn't get here overnight, and you can say this in a couple different ways, but like my wheelhouse is more like the injury prevention, mobility piece of things. And so I talk to people all day long and they're like, I'm so tight. And I'm like, yeah, you didn't get there overnight. It's from years and years and years of this. And so we talk about this in mental health too. It's like when you reach a breaking point, typically you didn't get that overnight, right? It's a buildup of things. And
Mhm.
so how can you get in front of it? How can you be more proactive and establish those routines and that consistency early in your career? And if you didn't do that early in your career, how can you start today to set yourself up for success for tomorrow? And I think it's that proactive wellness that a lot of times we, and as humans kind of miss, because I think it's our nature to kind of not deal with the problem until there's a problem, like it's not maybe a part of our awareness until we have an injury or, we need resources. But there was a question that was given to me recently, and it's really in line with what you just said, because someone asked me one of the same questions. They're like, how do you get people to do these things? How do you tell them that it's important to them? And my response to them was that I have never, ever, ever had success telling someone what to do. Unless it's like a family member or a really good friend or, a partner, like someone who like, you have that like maybe personal relationship with, but professionally, if I were to stand in front of you and be like, Sergeant Mulholland, you should do this.
Yeah.
I think there's usually kind of that like a little bit of like, who are you to tell me what to do? Like I'm going to do what I want to do. There's a little bit of that resistance, I think, just inherently in us. And so what I told this individual was, I have never had success telling someone what to do. Um, Instead, what I do is I pose the question to that individual of, why is it important for you to do these things?
Mhm.
I'm not here to tell you what to do. You have to be the one to identify, why is this important for you? Is that your family? Is that so that you can keep up with the young guys and girls? Is it safety, on the job? Why is it important for you? And then when the why is strong enough, the what and the how becomes easier. You
Mhm.
can kind of work backwards from there. But if you don't inside of you have a why and a driving force for this, then it's going to be so much easier to not do it. Like when my alarm goes off at 4 a.m., if I'm like, I don't really care, I'm not getting up. But if I'm like, I'm doing this because
Mhm.
I want to make sure XYZ, then that's going to be that motivator that is going to drive you moving forward. So I agree with you. I think that each person has to identify that within themselves and then make time for what's important to them.
Well, Paige, you hit on a couple of things. The physical fitness portion. The you got to ask the questions to those individuals, but the key you hit on there was leadership by example.
Mm,
And you can sit there and tell somebody what they need to do, but until you get out there and show them through your own examples, they're not gonna they're not gonna do it. And they're gonna see that through leaders and what leaders do. And they're going to, through peer pressure, through whatever it is, they're gonna want to be, I want to be like that man or woman. And
mhm,
they're gonna do it. And that was from the physical standpoint, but from the mental, spiritual standpoint, you hit on a very important topic of understanding your why. Why do I exist? Why do I get up? And it's important that we often, in the world we live in today, we often neglect the spiritual well-being. And it's important, no matter what you believe in, it's important to believe in something, whatever God, whatever that looks like. But it's important to have a strong spiritual foundation and understand your why. My why is I'm servant leadership. That's why I do what I do. I've always done that, and that's why I get up in the morning. And you're right. You hit that snooze button. I got 9 more minutes.
mhm.
It's so hard to get up, but you get up because there's people depending on you, and not only here at work but family. And if I don't get up, there's a lot of people are they're going to want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's important that people understand their why. It's important. We've touched on it before about um, individuals need, and it doesn't matter how old you are, what position you're in. People need to have a mentor, someone, an accountability partner. Um,
Mhm.
Whether you're just starting out in law enforcement or if you're a chief of an agency, you need you need a mentor. You need somebody that you can go to keep you in between the lines and keep you oriented, straight, and moving on down the road. So it's important to have that someone that you can go to for professional advice.
Yeah, I love, and I wrote this down. I love accountability partner. Anyone can relate to that. That like, and I'm gonna just bring it back to this really small example. Some people are really self-motivated, and so if you are one of those people, stop listening for a second. But there are some people who are not that way, and so anyone can relate though to this idea that For me, for example, I'm in the gym at 5 a.m. 2 days a week with a personal trainer. Would I get up and go to the gym at 5 a.m. if I didn't have someone counting on me or that accountability piece to it? I don't know. I don't know, and so I think that by having, like you said, that mentorship, that accountability partnership with people, it does make you want to do those things because you know that people are counting on you, and that people are waiting for you or they're showing up for you. And so you want to show up for them. So I really like that piece to it. I'm curious, and I'm hoping that, this isn't overstepping because I want you to share maybe some things that have worked for you. And if you have any like tactical, like this has worked for me to stay like on point with, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, is there anything that's helped you throughout the last 24 years?
Yeah, just having an accountability partner
Mm,
at church, someone to talk about the temptations that we face in life, as far as work goes, um, whatever team we're on, whether it be a sniper team or a tactical team, whatever it is, just you know, sitting down and breaking bread with these individuals
mm,
and talking, discussing what's important, the way forward, how we can do better. These are things that it's important to break bread together because you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about your people when you can sit down and enjoy a meal, break bread together, and get to know your team members and yourself.
yeah,
And it's again managing your day-to-day schedule and finding time to work out is important. And um, it's things that I've always done, and I try to. I don't always do as much as I should as far as what I need to do physically, but I know it needs to be done, and just keep oriented in the right direction, and trying to stay in the best shape as I can, and be there for my team members and for the community. So.
yeah. Isn't breaking bread also like an interview or like an interrogation tactic too? It's like you share food and you get people to talk, and the reason why I say that is because I think that we underestimate the power of just talking about stuff, and if you can create an environment that is trusting and casual, and you're just like you said, just having a meal and chatting about stuff, there's a release to that, and there's connection and there's community in that. And I think that that is a part of wellness. How can we offload some of those things in a healthy, safe space? How can we connect with other people who have experienced similar things, but then how can we also connect with people who have different perspectives on things, and how can we talk about important topics? How can we, try to improve each other and have high level conversations, not just conversations of like complaining about stuff, but how can we have productive, informative conversations where like we're all trying to be better? And I think that that is wellness. And my question for you is, how do you think that agencies can develop a culture where wellness is embedded into the organization in that same way of like, having these productive conversations and having that emotional intelligence and having that community? And how can you start to see wellness and, seeking out resources as a strength and not a weakness?
Well, it starts with the agency's culture and also the brand. Um, Here at Sandy Springs, we've got a brand that it's high standard. There's high expectations, and it's that message is conveyed across the community, across the state of Georgia, and it starts from the leadership, and to be able to you know provide a service, a police service, where we're out working with the community, conducting solid investigations, and tracking down that criminal element. That's the message that we're putting out there. That's our mission statement, and we're out there um, to just continue to provide to the community. And that relates back to individual preparedness, individual fitness, um, uh, emotional intelligence, emotional well-being. Our officers are making sure we're taking care of them, both physically and emotionally and mentally. And it's it's important to make sure that the leadership you know conveys the importance of the physical fitness, the mental fitness, and also the emotional intelligence of the officers, so where we can provide what we're saying we're going to provide in our mission statement.
Yeah. I like that you said wellness equals preparedness. I think that when it comes to breaking stigma and creating that like sentiment that this is strength, not weakness, if you can relate it back to like, we're doing these things so
Mhm.
that you're prepared. We're doing these things so that you're well, so that you're safe, so that you can provide the best service to our community. And in return, you're going to be paid dividends because now you have that fulfillment of, you know, fulfilling your why, which for a lot of people and that I've talked to in this profession is to help people and to make a difference, and so you're able to now feel like you're doing the best job that you can in the community and making the biggest impact that you can in the community. And then when you do that, we've talked about this on the podcast before, but now the community is seeing that and they're feeling supported and there's more trust there. And then they're going to be more receptive to you guys. And, it's kind of that partnership, that like cyclical partnership that happens. And so I really like that you said wellness is preparedness. And
Mhm.
I think that if that's the message, then it's a message of strength.
It is a message of strength, and it leads toward and you hit on it, the legitimacy and also the transparency that we're always striving to achieve in our community.
Yeah. I I only have a couple more questions for you because I know we're kind of buttoned up on time and I feel like we could talk for hours and hours. But when you think about the future of law enforcement, what do you think excites you the most?
I think the thing that excites me, there's a lot of stuff going on with technology and um, our unmanned aircraft systems, or the drones that are,
Mhm.
there's so much going on with the future of law enforcement, and the fraud, the cybersecurity and everything. But yeah, at the end of the day, it comes back to the community, and just that community relations, and building that trust, the legitimacy, the transparency with the community, having that support from the community. It's, I mean, that's what excites me the most, is just um, building that confidence in the community. And when you go to a gas station or a store, and people come up, and they're always thanking us, and that's, and we appreciate that. And it's good to hear that, good to feel the love. And that's, that's what excites me. And it's,
Yeah.
there's so much out there that is on the horizon, that is, from a law enforcement perspective, that we're going to have to combat. And you know to be able to have that support from the community is it's so important. And and we're here at Sandy Springs Police. We're always getting out with the community. Our community affairs officer is Jarrell Green, and he's always out, doing community engagements and passing the information, our concerns about what's on the horizon for law enforcement, programs that are going on in the community. So we're always out there engaging with the community, and that's exciting. So that's.
Love it. That's awesome. And my final question for you is for the younger generation. What words of wisdom would you share with someone earlier in their career? Maybe if you could go back in time and give your younger self some wisdom or advice, something that maybe you wish you would have known earlier or something that's helped you along the way.
Well, I've kind of got a mental list, and the the first thing, and I've already talked about it, so I'm not going to stay on that topic very long, but the importance of family and not neglecting your family. And we think that we get into a career, whether it's military or law enforcement, that if we're not at work, we're a failure, or we're gonna be looked down upon from our leaders. And so we stay at work all the time. We're constantly working, feel like we've got to do more, and we end up neglecting our family. And just to those young officers out there, and if anybody in your audience is in the military, just keep your family in mind. Your spouse, your children, they are most important. Um, Second thing, I kind of talked about it a while ago, the longevity. There's longevity, and a lot to be said for longevity. And in law enforcement, we often see officers that jump around agency to agency because they always think the grass is greener on the other side. Well,
Mhm.
my advice to them would be to maybe to water your own grass,
Mm,
because to to maintain longevity is so important, not only financially, but your reputation, um, your skill set. It's so important to stick with something and see it through.
yeah.
And the I guess the third thing would be the networking. And we talked about this at the very beginning, going into the military, and just understand the importance of networking as you go through your career. You know, keep keep names, contact information of people, because you're gonna need people. You need to surround yourself with with brilliant people, and there's so much talent out there, and make sure you capture that network. And as I mentioned before, I'm going through the Southeastern Leadership Academy through University of Tennessee, and it's just there's 53 members in that class, and just the amount of knowledge and experience in that class is so exciting. The network that I'm gonna get once I complete that course next month, it's going to be rewarding. It's going to pay off, and I'm looking forward to it. Not only from a professional standpoint, but just friends. I mean, lifelong friends that you're making. And the next point, I guess, is the discipline, and we talked about that. Make sure you got that discipline to see a task through. Be intentional. Um, don't just go through the day, just willy nilly, whatever. Be intentional in everything that you do. If like you talked about, getting up in the morning, be intentional. Get up with a purpose, and understand what that purpose is, and everything you do in your day, be intentional. Whether it's a traffic stop or whatever, you know, you're not necessarily looking to write a citation, but you're out there to educate the public. You're out there to, you may make a difference in someone's life. You don't know what type of day somebody's having, and
Yeah.
to be intentional to have a positive impact on that person. You mentioned earlier about the negative comments that we are bombarded with, whether it be the media or just our circle of friends. It's so important to surround yourself with positive energy, because that
Mhm.
positive energy will make an impact on your life. Be consistent. It goes back to longevity. Be analytical. Ask the why on everything. Don't just accept something that is the way it is. Ask why. And I guess the big thing there is, resist complacency. Don't settle. Always, whether it's physical fitness, mental fitness, emotional intelligence, don't accept where you are. Don't get complacent. Keep pushing to be better, because we always hear in law enforcement, complacency kills.
Yeah.
And always be out there with a purpose. And I guess those four things are the if I could share something with the future, that would be it. Those four things.
Thank you. I thought that those were great words of wisdom, and I really appreciate your time. I'm so happy that we finally had the opportunity to talk today, and I really appreciate you. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Paige. Thank you for having me on.
Of course.